What is up, guys? Welcome back. It is of course Sugi here with a brand new unorthodox build for Ashe known as AP Ashe Support, which actually did make a comeback on the competitive scene as it was played on LPL 2 months ago. However, that was full on AD build and they lost the game because they were not using my build. So this one is basically an AP build, although we could probably consider it as a hybrid one, as that's probably the best way to maximize your damage output. And it really revolves around the idea of building out Malignance. And why Malignance is such a good item for AP Ashe is because it's obviously going to be reducing your ultimate's cooldown, but also because of the Hate Fog passive. And obviously it gives you ability haste, so you can spam W more on the lane, poke the enemies, clear the wave. And it gives you an insane amount of mana as well, which makes you never really go out of mana. And really, the Hate Fog passive is really powerful because it gives you a 50 damage dot, which lasts for 3 seconds. And obviously, the stun of Ashe's ultimate is going to be lasting 3.5 seconds on max range. So basically, the enemy is going to be taking all the damage in, flat damage first from the ultimate. And obviously, the ultimate has one of the highest AP scalings in the game, that being 120%. So you're going to be taking around 300 damage give and take from the ultimate. Then you're going to be taking 150 damage from the Hate Fog, and then you're going to be taking the damage from the Arcane Comet as well, and the Scorch. So you're going to be having this huge damage output on a one single ultimate, which can be basically used globally. And obviously, with the rest of this build, which is really revolved around proccing different debuffs with your W, you are going to be having the cooldown on this ultimate at 26 seconds with max items and 5 ultimate stacks, which is insanely low. Probably one of the best ultimates in the game. You can steal so many objectives with it, you can catch up anybody off guard in the jungle, whatever. It's a powerful ultimate. So basically 3 times, and if you're going to be playing with Axiom Arcanist, that's obviously going to be reducing the cooldown 7% per enemy champion. So that means that it's going to be going into 24.15 second cooldown on the ultimate on 1 kill. So basically, if you're going to be getting like an ace or 4 people, well, the ultimate is going to be coming up really soon. So this is kind of like the gist of it, and really you have to be good at shooting these arrows in order to make an impact in the game. Obviously, I recommend going into the practice tool to just kind of practice landing this ultimate. The big tip I'm going to be giving you is obviously shooting the ultimates from the base, because this map is obviously diagonal, and making diagonal ultimates is going to be a lot harder. So you want to make horizontal ultimates as much as possible. Those are obviously much more expected as the higher the elo goes. But as you get more practice with Ashe, you're going to be landing those diagonal ultimates as well. The other very integral part about this build is the W, which does scale from AD. However, with this build, once you get the 6 items, you're going to be having a 2.2 second cooldown on your W, which is extremely low. So you're basically able to kite during the team fights in the late game a lot. And because you do have 2 mana regen items from your port item and Imperial Mandate, plus 600 mana from Malignance, you're never going to be going really on this build, as the Ranger's Focus really has no mana cost, and the E has no mana cost whatsoever. So basically, you're just able to spam infinitely your W. It also does apply a bunch of different on-hit effects. That includes Black Cleaver, Imperial Mandate, all the anti-heal debuffs. Leandra is also being applied for it, which is very good for increased damage against tanks. So it's really there for zoning and spamming. Also, it really works well with Arcane Comet, as it's really hard to dodge this spell, as it has so high range and there's so many arrows, which they recently did buff up the amount of arrows. I think it was 10 arrows on last rank, now it's 11. And also there's the Scorch, so it's going to be applying the Scorch debuff on the enemy as well. So it's going to be doing a lot of poke damage if you're going to be able to land it multiple times during the lane, especially when you're going to be getting like the 3rd rank on your volley. That's when you're going to be able to spam it a lot more frequently. You got to be a bit more conservative on it on level 1, as it has a bit more higher cooldown on the early game. Also, a quick plug for 1 vs 9, so in case you're looking for elo boosting, coaching, or specific skin in the game, or you want to buy a level 30 Smurf account to play with your friends, or maybe you just want to master out a new role or ADC or support, definitely go check this website out. And also use my code SUJO to get 20% off from every single purchase from this website. But let's carry on with the guide. Then looking at the runes, the keystone is obviously going to be Arcane Comet, as Phase Rust is really useless for Ashe. Aerie technically does the same amount of damage, but it's not AoE, and Ashe doesn't have any type of support abilities, so Arcane Comet is really the better option. Then on the second row, we're going to be going with Axiom Arcanist, as that is basically increasing the damage of the ultimate, and obviously it has that CDR component on the kills. Metaflow Band is only useful in the early game, as I already mentioned. There's so much mana regen and mana in this build that this becomes very obsolete. Nimbus Cloak is also kind of useless in my opinion. Third row, we're going to be going for Transcendence, as we want to spam more W and the ultimate. And then on last, we're going to be having Scorch, and this obviously going to be helping our early game and doing a lot of poke damage. Then you have two options. You're going to go for Precision and Domination. I always go for Domination. I will go with Cheap Shot, as that is going to be applied from your passive. So every time you're going to be hitting twice, because the enemy is going to be slowed by your autos, that's going to be applying Cheap Shot basically every second shot. Obviously there's the cooldown on that. If the lane is really hard, you could go for Taste of Blood, but that's going to be significantly reducing your damage. Then I guess you could go for Deep Ward if you wanted to, but really the best one here is Ultimate Hunter on the third row. In case of Precision, I guess you could go for a Legend Haste, and then you could go for like Cut Down basically. But ultimately I think the damage output of this build would be significantly lower. Technically, you can go for Alacrity as well in case you're going to be planning to run more of like attack speed items, in case you're going to be going like Dominic's Ricard and going to be getting a bit of crit. Then for the last runes, I always go with the 10% attack speed, as it makes the trading a bit easier and hitting those two stacks from your passive. Ability Haste can be used and Adaptive Force can be too. And then on the second, I either go with 9 Adaptive Force or 2 Movement Speed, usually Adaptive Force. But there's only 5 AD in the beginning, so it's not really that much. And then on the last, we're going to be going with the health scaling, and that's basically the runes you can go for. Then for the items, we're going to be starting off obviously with the support item and 2 potions. After that, in every single situation, we are going to be building Malignance first. And we're going to be building obviously tier 1 boots and Lost Chapter, as Blasting Wand has no usage for Ashe before she's level 6, so that's kind of useless to start off with. Then we are going to be getting, usually in 90% of the cases, Executioner's Calling, as there's enemy support that has a heal, or maybe another very annoying champion like, let's say, Aatrox or Briar or something like that. There's a lot of self-heals that are really, really annoying, so Executioner's Calling usually is a core item. Then if the enemy team has a lot of tanks, you want to go for Imperial Mandate, but in case there's a lot of enemies that have shields, then you want to go for Serpent's Fan. And usually at this point, you are going to be having your support item upgraded, and Zag is the way to go, as that scales from AP, and it does max HP damage, so that basically increases the overall damage output of your ultimate, and that's why I really always go with that one. As Bloodsong is kind of more like an AD item, it's maybe a bit for pushing and like short-term trades and stuff like that. But honestly, Zag is just going to be better, as a lot of this build is going to be rolling around, doing so much more damage with your ultimate. Then, alternatively, we can go into a lot of optional items, like Liandry is a good choice for a lot of, like, against tanks. Obviously, you're not able to build out both Mortal Reminder and Black Cleaver, so you're going to have to choose, are you going to be building out Executioner's Calling into Kempunk Chainsword or into Mortal Reminder? If you're going to be going with Kempunk, then you can build out Black Cleaver. And so in case you want to really like increase the output of your ADC's damage, then Black Cleaver is pretty good. Obviously gives a lot of ability haste and a bit of kiting ability. So I think Black Cleaver is a pretty good good weapon. And Kempunk Chainsword is not really that great because Ashe doesn't really need HP, but it does give a bit of ability haste. So usually when you go for Kempunk Chainsword, you are always going to go with Black Cleaver. In terms of the boots, I usually go for Berserker's Greaves, especially if we are going to be getting the boots upgrade. Heavy CC team, I usually go into Mercury Treads. If you want to really, really spam those ultimates, you can also go Boots of Ludicity, and that's really good also when you have the upgrade. And then there's obviously all those other traditional items like Shurelia's and Zeke's, and maybe Redemption and Mikhail's Blessing would be specific support items from traditional supports that you could consider. But in terms of usually in the most cases, you just want to go for damage. so those are not necessarily an option for you. And then lastly, let's talk about a bit of the matchups and synergies on bottom lane. So the best ADC pairings with Ashe are always going to be the ones that have poke, early game kill pressure, and can follow up on her CC on the W and R. Those would be Aphelios, Caitlyn, Draven, Jhin and Jinx, Twitch, Varus, and obviously Misfortune. The ones that kind of suck are the ones that have low wave clear and also kind of have weak damage output early on, and that would be Ezreal, Kai'Sa, Kalista, Kokma, Smolder, and Vayne, in my opinion. In terms of playing against different supports, you're going to be obviously having the most trouble against hyper tanks. Leona is okay to deal with. Alistar has a lot of tools to fight against your slows, and your hardest counter always is going to be Braum. Luckily, he doesn't have a high pick rate, but basically this is the hardest champion, as his shield is basically blocking out all the damage you're going to be pushing out with your W, and obviously he can totally counter your ultimates, so that's going to be a bit problematic. And obviously Mel can counter your ultimates, but the CD on your ultimate with the full build is going to be lower than on her shield, so she can't just use it constantly throughout the game. Obviously, some other champions outside of the lane that are going to be problematic to you are going to be like Master Yi, as you don't have any way to basically slow him as he procs out the ultimate, and it's really hard to land the R on him because he can just Q it and basically dodge it that way. So it's kind of like annoying champion to deal with. And maybe another one that would be kind of annoying would be Malphite, as he can just like ulti you from a long range and kind of get into the back line where you're going to be just spamming your W's. But outside from those two, there's not going to be a lot of problems. Even Morgana is not really that hard to deal with. You just have to bait the W out, and then you can freely deal with her. But basically that's up my guide, guys, and check out my other things on the channel. Obviously we have done the last couple of weeks, and make sure to subscribe and like. And obviously if you want to support me, check out 1 vs 9 also in the description down below. And thanks for watching. I will be seeing you soon.